It was a cold and rainy evening when Daniel, a struggling single father, was driving home from his late shift at the local diner. His worn-out pickup truck rattled along the nearly empty road, headlights cutting through the misty darkness. Life hadn't been easy for him since his wife passed away 2 years ago. Every day was a balancing act between working extra hours to pay the bills and making sure his 6-year-old son, Liam, felt loved and cared for. He wasn't wealthy, he didn't have much to give in material things, but Daniel had a heart full of kindness, and that, as fate would have it, was worth more than he could imagine. As he turned onto a quieter back road, he noticed a figure stumbling along the side of the road. At first, he thought it was just someone trying to get home in the rain, but then he saw something that made his chest tighten, a small child, barely 2 years old, clinging to the woman's leg. They were both soaked to the bone, and the woman's movements were slow and shaky. Daniel quickly pulled over, rolled down his window, and called out, "Hey! Are you okay? Do you need help?" The woman looked startled at first, clutching the little girl closer to her. Daniel could see now that her face was bruised, her lips split. The child's cheeks were red from the cold, and she was trembling. Without thinking twice, Daniel stepped out into the rain. "Please," the woman's voice cracked, we just need somewhere safe." He guided them into his truck, turning up the heat as quickly as possible. The little girl's tiny hands wrapped around her mother's sweater, eyes wide with fear. Daniel didn't press for details right away, he could tell they'd been through something terrible. Instead, he offered them the leftover soup he had packed for himself. The woman thanked him softly, her voice trembling with gratitude. On the drive to his home, Daniel learned her name was Emily, and the little girl was Sophie. Between pauses and nervous glances, Emily admitted they had run away from a violent situation. She didn't go into specifics, but Daniel didn't need them. He had seen enough pain in her eyes to know she'd endured more than anyone should. When they reached his small but warm home, Daniel offered Emily and Sophie a dry change of clothes that had once belonged to Liam when he was younger. He made up the couch with blankets and pillows, insisting they get some rest. Emily's hands shook as she tried to thank him again, but Daniel simply said, "You're safe here. That's all that matters." The following morning, Daniel called in to take the day off work. He cooked pancakes for everyone, something he hadn't done in a while because of his busy schedule. Liam, curious about their guests, quickly took to Sophie, sharing his toys and making her laugh, a sound that seemed to melt some of the tension in Emily's face. Over the next couple of days, Daniel began to notice subtle signs of just how much Emily and Sophie had endured. Sophie would flinch at sudden noises, and Emily would check the locks on the doors multiple times before she could relax. Daniel didn't pry, but he made sure they knew they had a safe place for as long as they needed. One afternoon, Daniel ran into a problem. He received an unexpected letter from his landlord reminding him of late rent. Money was already tight, and now with extra mouths to feed, it became even harder. Still, he refused to send Emily and Sophie away. "We'll make it work," he told himself. Helping them was the right thing to do, no matter how difficult things got for him. 3 days later, as Daniel was fixing a leaky faucet in the kitchen, there was a knock at the door. Emily froze, her face going pale. Daniel quickly went to answer it and found 2 police officers standing outside. His heart sank, worried that Emily's past might have caught up with her. "Are you Daniel Harper?" one of the officers asked. "Yes, is something wrong?" The officer exchanged a look with his partner before speaking. "We've been looking for Emily and her daughter, Sophie. They went missing several days ago, and there's been a city-wide search for them. But there's more you should know." Daniel stepped aside to let them in, and Emily immediately pulled Sophie close, fear in her eyes. But instead of taking her away, the officer knelt down to Sophie's level and smiled warmly. "You're safe now, and your mom is too." It was then that the officer explained, Emily wasn't just a victim of domestic violence. She was the estranged wife of a prominent philanthropist who had gone into hiding after uncovering illegal activities involving dangerous people. She and Sophie had been on the run, trying to avoid those who wanted to silence her. Daniel's decision to stop and help had unknowingly saved them from being caught by the wrong people. The police assured Emily that with their protection, she could now testify and bring justice to those responsible for the harm she'd endured. They also told Daniel that without his kindness, Emily and Sophie might not have survived the freezing night they'd been walking in. Over the next few weeks, Daniel kept in touch with Emily as she navigated her new life under police protection. What surprised him most was when she showed up at his door again, this time dressed warmly and with Sophie smiling in her arms. She told him she'd secured a safe home but wanted him to know that his kindness had changed her life. Then she handed him an envelope. Inside was a check large enough to cover his rent for the year and help him start the small repair business he'd always dreamed of. "You gave us safety when we had nothing," she said. "Now it's my turn to help you." Daniel was speechless, tears welling in his eyes. He had never helped Emily expecting anything in return, his heart had simply told him it was the right thing to do. But in that moment, he realized something powerful: acts of compassion have a way of coming back in unexpected, beautiful ways. From that day on, Daniel's repair business flourished, and he became known in his community as someone you could rely on, not just for fixing things, but for lending a hand when life broke people down. And though Emily and Sophie had to move far away for their safety, they sent him letters and photos, reminding him that even in the darkest moments, kindness could light the way. Daniel's story became one that inspired many in his small town. People began to look out for each other more, offering help without judgment, just as he had done. And every time it rained, Daniel would glance out his window, remembering the night when a simple act of pulling over changed not just one life, but 3. Because sometimes, the greatest rescue doesn't come from heroes in uniforms or capes. Sometimes it comes from ordinary people, doing extraordinary things simply because their heart tells them to. And that's the kind of hero Daniel would always be.